for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm David Delbridge. I'm Director of MarTech here at CACI. In my role, it's basically about helping our clients make the right decisions around their MarTech solutions and then get the most out of their MarTech investment.
And I'm Jonathan Eves. I'm the DataTech Practice Lead. Work very, very closely with David. My team design, build and implement large customer data solutions which are integrated often into the MarTech data provisions.
And our talk today, it will be expanding on a few of the points Tracy mentioned in her intro actually. We'll be talking about how to set up your DataTech and MarTech, get the platforms working together well in order to enable you to activate your data, i.e. so that you can harness all of the data you have at your disposal in order to deliver those great, relevant and timely experiences to your customers and prospects. So, in order to set the scene, we wanted to just talk through some of the key sort of challenges and questions that we often hear from clients. And hopefully some of these things resonate with you and are similar things to what you consider in your role. And there'll also be themes that we'll be addressing as we go through the presentation. So firstly, ensuring data can be activated. So most organizations these days aren't short of data. In fact, many organizations now have data lakes containing vast quantities of very, very granular data. So things like hit log data or very raw transactional data. So the data in and of itself isn't the challenge. It's making that raw data asset and turning it into something that you can use to drive your use cases. Key to that is ensuring you make the right decisions around how your platform should work together and the roles and responsibilities between each platforms. So both John and I spend a lot of time talking to clients about how to get DataTech and MarTech to talk together and to work well together, hence the title of this presentation today. Thirdly, navigating the world of MarTech and choosing the right platforms. There's an increasing array of different technologies out there, which we'll be talking about in more detail. How on earth do you make the right decision so you have the right way of activating your data and delivering those experiences? And then finally, how do you make all this happen? So you've identified you need to make some changes, and you maybe have even identified what some of those are. How do you approach this project to make sure you get things done in a timely manner and ultimately get that return on investment that you're looking for?
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to spend the next 3 hours, that's right, yeah, about talking about master data management. Actually, it's only 10 minutes, thank Christ. So when implementing MarTech or building a customer data solution, starting with the right foundations is important. Understanding the makeup of your marketing architecture and defining it is something that needs to be defined up front. It can be hard to predict future requirements, so creating a modular architecture allows you to utilize the right tools for your explicit requirements, whilst also giving you scalability and flexibility. A modular architecture uses a combination of integrated resources, such as a data lake, to deliver one single solution. Let us think about the core requirements of your architecture by oversimplifying some distinct capabilities and break them down into key characteristics. So number one, listen. Number two, that's not an instruction, but it is kind of an instruction. Number one, listen. Number two, learn. Number three, understand. And number four, act. So listen. You need the ability to process and receive data quickly and to allow you to store data for future application. The unstructured architecture of a data lake is precisely designed to support the fast onboarding and use of data. Secondly, learn. You want to use the data in your data lake to learn about your customers as soon as they interact with you. Coupling data science capabilities with a data lake allows you to explore and interrogate data in your data lake in its native form whilst also activating it on demand. Thirdly, understand. You need to pull together disparate sets of data into usable information, ready to use. An SCV enforces data consistency and integrity, aiding your customer understanding, preparing it for marketing and insight. And number four, finally, act. You need to process and respond to your customer data when it is most relevant. Even using event-driven processes allows you to act on your data as soon as you need to. It's important to take these high-level requirements and apply them to your discrete set of resources, ensuring that each component that you use has a clear and differentiated purpose. This ensures that there is no overlap between resources, reducing waste and confusion, also ensuring that each resource matches its capabilities exactly. REC, who are here today, and Ian there, paying attention, have employed this well. You've done a very good job with this. Using a combination of a data lake, SCV, and native cloud resources to give a fully integrated, modular, and flexible architecture. This has allowed them to build upon their impressive foundation and to create an architecture that will deliver future use cases. There is often a confusion about the role of the data lake versus the SCV. These two resources store data, but this is kind of where the comparison ends. Often the build of a data lake has been instigated by an IT team in order to create a single pool of data, devoid of application and just for storage. Implementing a data lake and filling it with data is just the very first part of the journey. Alone, it will not address marketing use cases. Work needs to be done on the data before it will, but as marketers, as we all are, we can harness the capabilities of data lake and build on our requirements on top of it. I think it's important to move beyond sort of crude catch-all titles and focus more about the capabilities and what we want our technology to deliver. So we talk about the key characteristics of data lakes and SCVs and explain how they can both be used well together. But individually, they both fall short. A data lake has no inherent consistency. This allows data to be stored and processed quickly, great for exploratory analysis or real-time and triggered activity. But routine processes that require consistency are inefficiently performed and can be costly. An SCV enforces structure and consistency, and making routine tasks quick and simple to do, ensuring that you get the same results time and again. It helps to organize customer data into attributes, behaviors, and traits, allowing you to understand a customer in a consistent manner. There can often be a temptation to have a one-size-fits-all approach and select a single technology that claims to fulfill all of your requirements. This is almost always a mistake and will result in significant compromise, a lack of flexibility, or increased running costs. Using technologies for tasks that best fit their architecture and intended use and combine them together will give you an efficient and scalable solution. Organising your data around your requirements is imperative. In order to successfully use your data for marketing insights, it needs to be properly prepared. It's important to focus on the data that you need for your marketing and for your marketing use cases, understanding data application and being deliberate about your data that you onboard and use is key. When using data, it's important to think about your customer and how they interact with you. A data lake structures data around data sources, which is why they're quick and fast to onboard new data sets. A well-designed SCV is structured around your customer and how they interact with you. I break it down in the following way. Number one, who is your customer? What is their name, where they live, what is their email address? How do they interact with you? What have they engaged with? Have they opened an email? Have they visited your website? And what behaviors do they exhibit? Have they purchased? And what have they purchased? And have they returned an item? And what traits do they have? Are they highly engaged or a potential churn risk? What products do they like? Organising your customer data and creating a good understanding of it is crucial for successful marketing. Early this year, we built a customer data solution, including an SCV for Brompton, the Brompton bike people. This solution, that wasn't a joke, by the way, I just forgot to say bikes, so you can laugh if you want, it's fine. This solution unified data from a number of sources and optimized it for use with Exponia, their CDP. Like all MarTech, you need to prepare your data for use by first thinking about its application. And a significant part of the project was spent getting the data fit for use within Exponia. A big part of the success of this project was creating a platform that supports the frictionless activation of data into multiple channels and tools, modeling a data set to be optimized for use in marketing channels, speeds up the integration, adoption, and use of the data in marketing platforms. In order to do that well, at the start of each project, I like to think about the following points. There's a build here, it's pretty good. It's good for me, come on. It's not as good as Matt's slides, but come on. The relevancy of the data, the recency of the data, and the presentation of the data. I couldn't think of a third P, it was quite hard. A third R, sorry, anyway. Relevancy. What data points do you need for your marketing use cases? MarTech tools are not databases, they're activation platforms. Only the data that you really need for campaigning should be kept there. Keeping data volumes low into channel solutions will reduce costs and processing time, not to mention reduce the risk of a data breach. Recency. How much data do you need to onboard and how far back do you need to go? The chances are you don't need scores of historic data to send comms. The recency of data should be reviewed so you aren't processing and storing data unnecessarily. And presentation. How do you present your data to make it easier to use? In almost all cases, the presentation of data can be improved, which in turn makes it easier to integrate into multiple platforms and for the platforms themselves to be used. We need to remove the amount of translation the user or platform needs to do to do reducing ambiguity and creating consistency. Failure to do the previous steps correctly can create bloated tools, leave them unwieldy to use by marketers, and leave you with unnecessary and significant compute costs. Central to the success of Brompton, the bike people I mentioned earlier, was the creation of a central data asset where customer data is mastered. This can be used for activation in multiple channels or endpoint solutions, making it easy to onboard new platforms. The data asset will remain and persist, allowing it to be built upon over time. Its uses can be expanded, integrated into other channels, and getting this right, and you will have a foundation for success that will continue to evolve and last for years. David, or Fred as he's often known, is going to talk about how the proliferation of MarTech, and in particular CDPs, and how the explosion of MarTech further emphasizes the need for marketers to take control of their data and create architectures that can be there where software can be easily integrated and removed.
So, as John's explained, once you've got your data harnessed and you've got an architecture that presents that data in a required usable format for your use cases, it's all about making the right choices around MarTech. Now, a lot of you may have seen the image on my left here, or also on my right, before. This shows Scott Brinker's evolution of his MarTech vendor landscape that he does every year. And as you can see from the numbers on to the left of the image, there's been an absolute explosion in the number of MarTech vendors out there, and all of them are probably trying to email you left, right, and center and convince you that their solution is exactly what you need. Now, on a related point, clients do often come to us and say, you're the experts. What's the best CDP, or what CEP should we buy, or what CRM tool should we be using? And that's a difficult one for us to answer directly. There are certainly some great platforms out there, and there's some market leaders in each space. However, the reality is that no two tools are quite the same, and every organization has very specific requirements that need to be considered. Acronyms aside, the reality is that vendor offerings, even within specific spaces, vary hugely. CDP space being a good example of that. So within that space, you have some vendors that are very focused on the sort of data collection aspects of the CDP, others more around the orchestration and execution, others still focusing on decisioning and machine learning and AI capabilities. So our answer always to the what is the best tool question, perhaps unhelpfully for some of you in the room, is always, well, it depends. Ultimately, it depends on your capability, your use cases, your budget, your requirements, and also what stack these tools have to be integrated into and how they're going to work together. So we're not going to tell you which tools necessarily to go out and get, but we are going to talk about some common pitfalls that we see clients taking on this journey. So the first is a lack of due diligence and preparation, I guess. So we see clients do this often because maybe a competitor has gone out and acquired a particular bit of kit and they've heard great things about it, or they're just very keen to see some demos of CDPs or whatever it might be because they're excited and want to look at lots of different technology. Now, the challenge with this approach, when you haven't got your requirements and use cases well defined, is you end up having a bit of a vendor beauty parade. And ultimately, you might find yourself selecting a bit of kit based on whoever did the flashiest demo or maybe who had the most dynamic salesperson. And what you might not end up is actually what the capability in the platform that you needed. Additionally, you might actually make a good choice inadvertently and actually get a really good bit of MarTech. But if you haven't done that due diligence, you'll then find when it comes to implementation that you don't really know what it is you're implementing and how you're going to integrate that bit of kit into your existing stack. Secondly, trying to solve all of the challenges with a single platform. This is something else we see clients fall into, for example, into a problem we fall into. Sorry. So one client we worked with recently in the fashion space, they had this exact experience. So they decided they needed a customer data platform, but while they were at it, their ESP was somewhat dated, and so they kind of wanted to address that as well. And also, they didn't really have any CRM reporting, so they kind of wanted to address that as well. So they went out, met with a few vendors. One in particular convinced them that they could do all of these things and more. So they went and procured that vendor. Then down the line, they found that actually the CDP capability wasn't quite as complex or as advanced as they needed, so that didn't really stand up. Also, its orchestration capability wasn't as advanced as what they had in the current ESP already, so that didn't quite work out. And unfortunately, the reporting kind of fell off the roadmap of the vendor and wasn't a strategic priority anymore, despite what they promised during the procurement process. So our advice on the selection of MarTech is to be focused. Make sure you know what you need and make sure you know who you're talking to and what their specific capabilities are, and be really focused around finding the right solution. So the hot topic, customer data platforms. I'm sure it's a term a lot of you have heard bandied around a lot recently. And we figured no presentation on MarTech in 2021 would be complete without us talking about CDPs. They have been the hot topic of the last few years. John and I have lots and lots of conversations with clients about them and have done lots of projects navigating the world of CDPs and helping clients with their journeys around them. And we are finding now we are at the point where CDPs play a very central role in a lot of our clients' marketing stacks and really play a very, very key role. So what we wanted to address is use this time to answer a few key questions. Firstly, what is a CDP? So in short, it's a piece of software that allows you to leverage all of your available data to deliver the right message across any channel. Now, that sounds very similar because that's what most MarTech has been promising you they could do for the last 10 years. But CDPs do genuinely take things to the next level. Firstly, they allow you to personalize messaging for the full length of the customer journey, right from that first interaction, so someone landing on your website, for example, or landing in your app, right through to win-back and so on and so forth. Secondly, the integrations. So they are integrated with ESPs, campaign management tools, CRM platforms, but also online personalization tools, social networks, and paid media, and etc. And in fact, a good measure of the maturity of a CDP, I always think, is how many integrations they offer. So if anybody asks about a CDP I'm less familiar, often I'll have a look at the integrations and see, do they integrate with all the main players across all those different spaces? So secondly, do you need a CDP? Well, probably yes, eventually, frankly, on the assumption that you're keen to ensure your customer experiences are more consistent and joined up, which as marketers, I'm sure we're all keen on that. Having said that, this isn't just about joining the CDP club or ticking a box. As with any tech investment, it's really important that you define what your use cases are and you identify that you do need the CDP in order to deliver those use cases, and that you also go through an exercise of justifying that investment and making sure the value case stands up. Finally, how do you get the most out of a CDP if you have one or if you're considering one? Well, the first point on this is going back to what John was saying, it's about the data. So CDPs, as with any other piece of MarTech, will not solve your underlying data challenges, and it's important that you get the data in a good position before you look to leverage a CDP in order to get the most value out of it. So that's absolutely key, as with any MarTech implementation, get the data right in the first place. Secondly, this is it's another thing, Tracy, you touched on in your introduction, but is making sure you don't underestimate the amount of organizational change you need to consider when you bring a CDP into your business. The whole point of a CDP is it's meant to break down those silos in different customer experiences. So trying to join up experiences across digital, across CRM, across paid media, you name it. Now, that's all very well, but most organizations have teams structured around that. So if you're going to harness a CDP and deliver a consistent customer journey, firstly, well, you need to have one defined, and secondly, you need to think about operating model, people and process, ways of working, and roles and responsibilities to make sure you actually understand as an organization who's going to use the CDP and how. We did work with a client in the UK fairly recently who didn't give this enough thought, and they were an early adopter of a CDP, but because they didn't think about the organizational impact and changes that were needed, they basically implemented the first 3 use cases pretty quickly, within sort of 3 months, and then nothing. The platform basically sat there gathering dust because they hadn't figured out how to use it. And the platform itself was a perfectly good CDP, it's just they hadn't got the operating model bits sorted. Okay, final slide from us. We wanted to end with some top tips on how to set yourself up for this change. So firstly, as I hope we've said a few times, is all about planning ahead. So before you jump into maybe having, talking to vendors or getting demos or even talking to architects, it's about thinking about what it is you actually want to do. What are your use cases and what's the data you need in order to deliver on those? Secondly, I've just been talking about this, building the foundations. So making sure you've figured out exactly how you need the data presented and you've got the right solutions in place to present that data in order to get the most value out of the MarTech that you ultimately integrate with. And finally, again, Tracy, you said this one, make friends with IT. I expected a groan across the room. So IT, I think, are very key in any project such as this now. They will be the gatekeepers for any data lake or any access to any data that you might be needing. So it's absolutely key to work closely with IT, make sure your requirements and priorities are on their radar, and ultimately help them to support you in getting what you need to deliver your use cases.